Okay. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Go ahead and make your way over to the seats. We'd love to get this highly anticipated event started. Apologies for our lengthy delay. You know, it can't be a cutting-edge event without some technical difficulties. I'm going to keep talking until everybody in the park starts to make their way over to the seats. We'd love to get going. We've had some patient folks over in the virtual end. Hey, everybody joining us via YouTube, or maybe you're joining us via XRSpace's Go XR platform, which, breaking news, 5G Hub now exists in the Metaverse. For those of you that can't get enough of us, join us in the Metaverse. Maybe you'll see me hanging out in there every now and again. Good to see you guys. Go ahead and make your way over to the seats. We'd love to get going. We have some anxious panelists to come out here and share their insights and expertise with you. And ultimately, we want to innovate with you. We want you to innovate with us. We're here as a resource. If you've got any crazy, good, awesome, half-baked ideas, let us know. Go to our website, techexperience.com. We want to hear from you. But for those of you grabbing that last final drink, I'll leave you to make your way over during the sizzle. Thanks for being here, you guys.
And welcome to the 5G Hub Speaker Series. And no better way to kick off today's session than live from our very own 5G Hub in the Metaverse. How cool is this? Our remote attendees are now able to engage and experience with our 5G Hub and Speaker Series like never before. Immersive, interactive, and personalized. A big shout out to the folks at XRSpace for making this mind-blowing experience possible. I can't wait to learn more about the Metaverse and experiences just like this. So let's get things started. And yes, this is all live, I promise. Hello. Wow, look at that. That is so awesome. She looks pretty cool. All right, I think it's time for the real Erin Rainey to get back to work. What do you think? All right, hello everyone. Welcome again to the 5G Hub Speaker Series on the Metaverse. My name's Erin Rainey. I lead the Tech Experience program here at T-Mobile. And again, excited to host the folks here in the room and join us virtually and in the Metaverse. Hello, welcome. So as we explore the topic of the Metaverse, I know there is a lot of excitement, buzz, and even uncertainty. But one thing is certain, the Metaverse presents a huge opportunity for us to connect and interact in ways we never thought possible. The Metaverse builds on the potential we have seen with AR and VR and immersive experiences, along with the ongoing efforts of the digital transformation. It enables new benefits with the use of digital twins, remote workplace collaborations, or even immersive sales experiences for customers, just to name a few. In fact, 89% of business executives surveyed by Accenture agree the Metaverse will play important roles in their organization's future growth. And the platforms building the Metaverse will have a major dependency on CSPs to enable it. Metaverse-ready networks will require end-to-end connectivity and performance, network as a platform for simplified operations, access to industry partners for growth and new revenue streams, and new network products to be leveraged by both enterprises and consumers. And this brings us to 5G. With a wide range of coverage and mobility access, along with the orchestration of platforms, content, and devices, our 5G network provides the infrastructure to help enable and grow the Metaverse. In fact, the global Metaverse revenue is expected to reach $13 trillion by 2030, according to Citigroup. Potential use cases range across verticals from industrial, healthcare to automotive. driving reduced operational costs, enhanced worker safety, increased customer engagement, and improved production cycles, and so much more. So let's now explore the many opportunities the metaverse has to offer and how 5G will help enable these new use cases. Please join me in welcoming our panelists out on stage. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right, again, you guys are in for another treat. We have some incredible and very patient panelists as we work through our technical difficulties. Thank you. So I'm going to start off with some introductions. First, we have Kurt Liu, General Manager of GoXR at XRSpace. Kurt is an experienced professional with a track record spanning mobile technology, virtual reality, global social community, to avatar technology. He did a pretty good job with my avatar, don't you think? As the previous head of HTC Social Community and General Manager of Digital Domain Taiwan, Kurt has a solid software engineering background and strong product-driven professionalism. Kurt has also led multinational teams across roles including development, product strategy, business partnerships, sales, and marketing divisions. Thank you for joining us, Kurt.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, next we have Rebecca Lee. Rebecca is the North American lead of Accenture's Metaverse Continuum Business Group, responsible for introducing and enabling metaverse solutions for clients in the United States and Canada. With over 25 years of experience in digital agencies, startups, and high-tech marketing, Rebecca has constantly driven the adoption of emerging technologies. She has been instrumental in establishing Accenture's global partnership with Meta since 2017. Additionally, she serves on the board of directors for the San Jose Public Library Foundation, which provides vital programs to support workforce development, literacy, and digital inclusion for the residents of San Jose. Thanks for joining us, Rebecca. All right, and next we have Dr. Paul Jacobs, Chairman and CEO at Xcom, an investment company that works with innovative engineers and business leaders. As the former CEO and executive chairman of Qualcomm, Paul led the development of mobile technology that revolutionized the wireless internet and smartphone industry. He holds over 80 patents in wireless technology, and he is a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Paul is also the owner of the Sacramento Kings and serves as a director of Dropbox, ARM Limited, and First. Thanks for joining us, Paul. All right, and finally, we have Erez Yarkoni. Erez is the Executive Vice President of Customer Operations and Revenue with Karat, the world's largest interviewing company. With a passion for building businesses based on technology, Erez has a unique blend of global go-to-market leadership, technical savvy, and experience launching new categories that change the way enterprises conduct business. Previously, Erez held technical, operational, and strategic leadership roles at leading organizations like Checkpoint Software, Telstra, Aptio, and T-Mobile. Welcome back. Today, Erez leads Karat's go-to-market function, helping tech-forward organizations around the world unlock opportunities by making it easier to hire the right software developers for their business. Thank you for joining Erez. All right, big round of applause to these panelists. Wow. All right, so here's the plan. I'm going to start by asking our panelists a few questions, and then we're going to turn it over to our audience here. So please get your questions ready, both here in the room. The folks joining us virtually, you can enter your questions into the chat. All right, let's get started. The first obvious question. I want to hear from each of you. What is the metaverse? 10 words or less. Go. No.
Thank you, Erin.
No, for real.
Okay.
How would you describe the metaverse, and then specifically, how does it apply to your role in your organization?
Okay, I'm going to try to describe it in less than 10 words.
Okay.
No, not really. Metaverse is this 3D, real-time, fully interactive experience that's going to bring people together beyond physical boundaries, right? So at XRSpace, we're focusing on the experience, transforming the 2D existing experience to 3D, from sharing to participating. Let me give you an example. So when we start building this 3D experience, we sit down and ask ourselves hard questions. What do people want? What do people really enjoy every day? So after a few experiences, we found the answer, which was music, and more specifically, be able to sing and dance together. How many of you here knows a thing or two about karaoke? Oh, that's good.
Oh, wow.
And you know karaoke is huge in Asian communities, right? So I'll just give you an example of the difference what we provide that's different from the 2D existing experience. So we let user very easily activate a 3D space with a 3D avatar and let people joining from not just VR, AR, but smartphone and tablets to join from different parts of the world. And right away, we got very good traction, and the traction was basically feedbacks from the user. For example, many users claim that they were in our platform for many hours every night. And the feedback also includes that compared to the 2D live streaming watching experience, they remember everything, right? The visualization of 3D, they remember that, yeah, my friend Aaron from Seattle was on my right-hand side. We were chatting and the jokes that we share. I met this new friend, Rebecca, on my left-hand side at 9 o'clock. We were sharing also jokes, and it was just great. I remember everything. So this is the difference from just browsing the content and being part of the content, being there and take part of the experience. So that's, in the nutshell, the metaverse.
Excellent. Thank you, Kurt. Rebecca.
We at Accenture define the metaverse as the next evolution of the internet. And we think about that, we think about two things, which is the internet of place and then the internet of ownership. Within the internet of place, we think about bringing the 3D iteration of the internet to create the sense of space within digital worlds, but then also layer on top a digital component on top of physical worlds. So kind of the AR component. And then in terms of the internet of ownership, we think about it as a collection of technologies and infrastructure that basically allows the utilization of things like blockchain so that people can take their identities, their money, and their objects from place to place within digital worlds.
Oh, great. Thank you, Rebecca. Paul.
Yeah, so, I mean, the metaverse is a work in progress. You know, it's going to be many different things to many different people, just like the wireless internet became many things to many people. And at Qualcomm, when we were building the foundations for the wireless internet, we were imagining all these different things, but what actually came out was so much more than what we might have imagined. And so at XCOM, we're doing the same for Metaverse. We're building technologies that allow you to have a fully photorealistic, immersive experience, walking around without wires, with things that are much lighter, very high bandwidth. And it's going to give you this sense of really being engaged in something real. And you know, talking about the Kings, for example, because I own the Kings, I get to sit on the floor and watch these incredible athletes right up close. And I can do the same in the metaverse. We can volumetrically capture the athletes, and everyone can feel like they're sitting there right as that action's happening. And we're talking about things like after the game, being able to go and see that alley-oop dunk and watch it up close, maybe even jump as high as those guys do. And so this notion that I'm going to be able to have these experiences that are fully feeling real to me and evoke all these emotions because it's so immersive, we needed to build the right foundations for that. We needed to make it so it made you feel good, not sick, not getting sick to your stomach, not having your ears feel things that your eyes aren't seeing, and so forth. So we put a lot of effort into the technical underpinnings of that, and that's what we focused on as one of the key components at XCOM.
Thank you, Paul. Erez?
Yeah, well, I think maybe there will be more than one metaverse. And I definitely think that's a place where you enhance an experience by curating and enabling things that are not necessarily fully capable in the real world, but it has a purpose. Like, would be you can enhance the experience you see a basketball game in the metaverse. It will be enhanced. It could be a business experience or a business work environment. It could be any one of those, but it's definitely a place where we'll curate and enhance what we know as regular 3D experiences today.
Love it. We were talking earlier, well, I love basketball games. I would love to be able to go see Taylor Swift in the metaverse and save money on those tickets for my daughter. So yeah, I think talking about those experiences and enriching those, and it really comes down to the quality of that, so that people actually enjoy it. So there's been a lot of hype about the metaverse over the last year and a half, a lot of buzz. But we haven't seen the adoption yet. What's holding us back? And Rebecca, maybe let's start with you on this.
Well, I think some of what is holding us back is that there's a technology layer that still needs to kind of be figured out, as well as the use cases. I think there's a lot of fragmentation in terms of the use cases, so there might be little ideas and concepts of like, oh, okay, maybe we can go visit a fast food restaurant in the metaverse, but what was the purpose of that if that's not tied to some specific value? So I think what's holding us back is it's just still really early days, and we're still trying to find those use cases that are going to be meaningful both to consumers as well as to enterprises.
Anything to add?
Oh, I mean, the user device is clearly something that's holding things back. I mean, they look a little geeky right now. They're a little heavy, expensive. Battery life doesn't last so long. So it's getting that thing right. And I'm an old guy, so I'll go back to my experience with wireless internet, where we worked on it for a long time, and then the iPhone came out. And it used to be people would say to me, what the heck do I want a camera on my phone for? What do I want the internet on my phone for? I just want to make phone calls. And then all of a sudden, I was the most popular guy at the cocktail party, like, what's the next feature coming? And so on and so forth. And so I think the same thing's going to happen here. We are going to get to a tipping point where it's good enough, and then we'll have that virtuous cycle where the applications will come and just things that we never imagined will come about. And so I believe that. I think that there are these things that we know: music, sports, education, training. There's these applications we know are good that people will want. And we just got to deliver it as an industry. We have to deliver in the form that people are willing to accept.
So the angle and the approach that we took is similar to what just said. But actually, XRSpace started out by making our own VR headsets, and people get sick. The setup is complicated, whatnot. So there's definitely a technology barrier there. But so the approach then we took is that we noticed when people jump right into the 3D experience, they get lost because, again, the existing 2D experience is about browsing the content. So the thing we did is that, okay, there are billions of smartphones out there, and how do they get familiar or get acquainted with the 3D experience? Plus, what's the device out there that really has the 5G connection, right? As I mentioned, Metaverse is about this wonderful thing that integrates all the AI, 5G, edge compute power, all into this wonderful experience. But there isn't a 5G VR headset or AR glasses out there. So what we did, and what you just saw Aaron did in the beginning, is that you can easily access the experience through what you have today, smartphone. So I think that's what's holding us back. One of the hurdles is the accessibility of the device. And what we did is trying to educate the market through the device that they have every day, which is a smartphone. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I think it just has to move beyond cool to something that is really better than a physical experience. And once everything that enables that, including the ecosystem, the devices, the infrastructure, and that, but then the first application that will just say, hey, when I do this, it actually is a better experience, that will start tipping it.
So next question, where do you see meaningful monetization happening first? Is it consumer or enterprise? And maybe share which application or use case you think might resonate most. Rebecca?
I'll give a consulting answer.
Please, please.
Just both.
sure.
So we are seeing actually monetization applications on both the enterprise and the consumer side. On the enterprise side, it's really with immersive learning as well as collaboration and kind of the future of work. So how people are meeting together, collaborating, and interacting in a different way. And then on the consumer side, a recent example, well, we're really seeing kind of the movement towards how brands interact with customers, right? And on the customer side, a recent example is we worked with a brand to basically create digital collectibles that were collected in a physical environment. We were able to prove monetization, which was really exciting, very quickly by 2 ways. One is that recurring visits, so people were seeking out the digital collectibles, so they actually went to the physical location more frequently than they normally would have, and they scheduled very specific visits to the location, which was great because they had to pay to get into the location. And then we also tested whether people would buy some of the digital collectibles, right? So were they valuable enough that people actually wanted to purchase the digital collectibles? So we also saw that as a positive outcome as well.
Oh, that's exciting. Thanks for sharing.
Our first customer was a company called The Void, where you would wear 22 pounds of equipment, a big computer on your back, and heavy headset, and you would go through like Star Wars, Jumanji, Ghostbusters. And it was super cool because what you saw in the virtual world, there would be some analog in the physical world. So if there was a button to press, there'd actually be a button that you'd press. You could pick up the gun and shoot the stormtroopers or fight Darth Vader with your lightsaber and stuff like that. And the problem with that was COVID came along and sort of took that company down while they were just getting ready to expand. So they're on their way back, and I still believe in that kind of experiential, like being in the movie itself. Right now, we're more focused on simulation and training and visualization, things like that. The government's obviously very big into simulation and training, so we're installing systems there. And then we're talking to companies that are doing training for situations which might be too dangerous or expensive to actually do training for. So I think that education, these are things that are relatively easy to get going. You can understand the benefit of it, and as you said, you remember more by being in that immersive environment. So I think there's really is a there, and that we need it to scale. Like that's the first step, and then it needs to scale to be consumer to really drive huge numbers. But I think that's where these things will start.
Yeah, I think that in the last couple of decades, innovation adoption has been in consumer a lot faster than it was in business, especially when it comes into when you have devices introduced into that as well. It's just it just happens to be that way, and there's a lot of limitations in business into what you can bring in and what is secure and what is approved and what is so on. So I do think that probably full VR will be adopted first by a consumer experience and maybe entertainment, and then there are a few killer apps like I think Paul said around military, police, training, those kind of things, but also augmented reality killer apps for knowledge-based type of work that you have to do in a physical environment that I think can be fast to adopt because there's clear benefit to go around the hurdles of bringing the equipment and working around the regulation and so on.
One of the notable use cases on our platform is, so we got music, and we got museums, and we got also religion. So this is one of the notable use cases that happened late last year when one of the most ancient temple in Taiwan approached us and said, hey, we want a metaverse version of our temple because we got millions or tens of millions of followers around the world. But they can, because of COVID, that they couldn't be in the at the temple physically. So we did that. And so we got involved with the Ministry of Culture of Taiwan, and even Meta wanted to get involved because if you look at the platform out there, 90% of the contents are mostly gaming. And when they saw us taking the approach with art and culture, and again, temple culture is huge. I guess religious practice is huge everywhere. It's also huge in Taiwan. So they want to get into it and let people have their daily ritual practice. So it's what we call a relevant content for the consumer to understand it instead of talking about the technical terms of what Metaverse is, but communicate with them through this daily relevant content. So that's the approach that we're taking.
Love that. That's a great example.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience. So you guys get your questions ready. So let's talk about specific experiences in the metaverse. What features bring the greatest value? Now, you want to talk a little bit about the avatar?
Okay, right. Why do we think avatars important? Well, that's the representation of you. You get into this digital world through your avatar. But one thing to note, there are a lot of avatar services out there that are focusing on the personalization, the customization for people to do different things and showing off. That's important. But what we are working on, as you saw in the beginning, what Aaron shows you, is to provide people with more expressive, more responsive avatar, because we believe that if avatar is not responsive or expressive enough, it's just, we want to improve that user engagement, in that emotional connection. So, for example, like I'm talking here excited with my hand gesture and everything, and I see some of you like nodding and some of you shaking your head. See, that's how you express yourself, and that's how I know how you feel. And then I can respond to that, and I can respond to you in real time. And so, again, the emphasis on using the smartphone, the daily device, that you can express yourself and get that emotional engagement. And that's what we're going to continue to work on and improve. And headsets, VR, AR, it's gonna come. It's gonna come. But we want, again, this is the time where we educate the market, doesn't get familiar with the 3D experience. So yes, avatar is super important.
I would say it's probably two things, a sense of presence and a sense of immersion. And that could be either in a virtual reality type of world or in an augmented reality type of world. And so I think that the sense of presence, and when you're in VR, it is really immersive, right? And you really feel like you're there. You forget where you are in your house or in your office. And those are definitely indelible experiences.
And making it feel as real as possible, right?
Yeah.
I would say, so focusing on the foundational technologies, getting the latency of the system so that as you move your head, the images that you see are aligned so that you feel very natural in it is incredibly important. We've had a number of people come to our offices and tell us they didn't even want to try our VR system because it made them sick. Ones they had tried before made them sick. Said, okay, try this, because we spent a lot of effort really making sure that those motions are very tightly aligned to what you see. And so that, I don't think it'll take off until you feel very comfortable being immersed for reasonably long periods of time. And then another thing that goes with the presence is this notion of how can I capture, actually also, sort of this question of having your avatar be expressive. But I think that this ability to capture your actual natural emotions, your brain is amazingly set up to recognize naturalness and human sort of movement, organic movement. And I learned this one time when we set up a system in our lab where we had LiDARs scanning, and we pumped that into the headset. So I saw not fully formed people, but just point clouds of the people and the environment around. And my brain turned those clouds of green dots into human beings. And in fact, the human beings who I knew, because I could see how they stood, how they held themselves, how they talked, how their head moved. And I came to realize that this is incredibly important. Our brains get the data from the sensors on our bodies in very sparse ways and construct this world inside our heads. And I think we are very set up to see naturalness in movement and to recognize it. And so we need to recreate that in the virtual world if we're going to give this sense of presence, of actually being there with the person or people or other things that we're interacting with.
I think there were great points, and there will be all the enablers to be there. And then the next set would be when I'm in that environment, can I complete my experience there? So the next killer would be if I'm transacting, can I pay? Can I receive payment? If I'm playing, can I swap? Can I share? Those kind of things. So I'm not sure what will be the killer, but the barrier of entry has been described here. So.
Great, thank you. All right, we've got our first question.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to hear from all of you. I have a question specifically to Paul, maybe others can answer too. And then I have a second question to XRSpace. The first question is, if you fast forward in time, you can imagine a time where, yes, we'll go through ups and downs, but there is at some point a mass adoption of this VR, AR, XR experiences, right? But at that point of time, you can imagine that there is going to be some constraints on the network like ours, or at least some tax, right? Has anybody been, talking with the likes of T-Mobile, or the industry has been running some numbers and saying this is how much the projected use from not just the smartphones, but AR, VR spaces will be, so that people like us are better prepared for that world? That's the first question.
Yeah.
And the second question, sorry if I may, do you want me to
It's two.
do you want me to ask the second question now?
Why don't we do this one, and then we'll come back and do the second one? Okay.
Okay, so the answer is that's actually one of the things that we're focused on. So at XCOM, it's people that I've been working with for 30 years, developing the next new wireless technology, and we came upon this idea of using joint processing, and we can actually massively increase the throughput of a system. And the way that it works is it actually spatially isolates the users that are in the coverage area of the system, and so they each feel like they have the cell to themselves. And doing that, we can put many people in the same space, each of them getting hundreds of megabits per second to their devices, and then that allows us to offload the rendering to an edge server, so I can throw as much GPU at it. I don't have to worry about the heat, the battery, the size, all these things of the user device, and I can get additional, get the throughput that I need to the devices. So that's one of the things that we're very focused on, is how to get those kind of data rates. And it goes back to our history. Every G transition, we had an application that we said that's the one that's going to set the design specs. And when we did XCOM, we said XR on the downlink and real-time video on the uplink, those were the things that we were going to focus on, and we have been able to achieve these capabilities. Now, whether the world is ready for those yet, that remains to be seen, because we're like at Qualcomm, we were often 8 to 10 years ahead of the deployment. So we need to see these applications come to fruition and actually create that demand on the network. But the technology is, like, we know what the technology is. We know how to build it now.
Got it. Thank you. So my second question, which will be my final question, is in the XR space, right? It is pretty cool to see Erin's avatar and all that, right? But if I may say, it is still not natural. I don't know if you have seen, but the facial movements of the avatar were not like how cool Erin looks right now.
Thank you.
So I have to butter her up so that I can come back and ask the next question. So what are your
Enough said.
what do you see? What do you see is constraining you from getting to the full potential? Is there a space for T-Mobile to help? That's my second question.
So that part is a work in progress, like Paul said. Metaverse is a work in progress. What we did is our approach, step by step. Right now, there isn't out there any avatar you can drive real time, right? Again, that real time interactive experience is super important, number one. Like I said, the technology will advance. What Paul just said as well, 5G and edge compute. You can throw as much GPU in the cloud and render in the cloud so that the device, it does not become a constraint. What you saw was because right now there's just not enough rendering power on the device. not about 5G, but when the rendering power is available on the cloud, then from capturing to retargeting of the avatar that's on the cloud with edge compute and the best 5G network in the US, T-Mobile, that immersiveness and that responsiveness will be there. So it's a work in progress right now.
So if I may say, if I may clarify, do you think that our current 5G technology is sufficient for you? Is just that
Right now, it's sufficient. Right now, we're focusing on the rendering power, right? 5G is sufficient. For example, the voice, it was on point. It was very interactive, right? Now, the next step is on the rendering side.
Next question.
Hi, thanks. When you were asked about the barriers or obstacles to adoption for Metaverse, everybody answered with a technological problem, a technological barrier. More high fidelity, more faithfulness for reality. I don't know if people fully need that. I mean, Elvis, the Beatles sold millions of records on AM radio. That's not high fidelity, and yet people went crazy for it because they were led up by what it was. Could somebody answer what they might think a use case or a content reason would be for Metaverse adoption, or a barrier to that? Is it that there's just, I mean, you brought up karaoke and church services, and I see sports games as being, a really good draw. Anybody else have any content-based solutions that would draw people to Metaverse?
Question.
Look, I think that actually in B2B, if you think about today, let's say that tomorrow I wanted to set up a sales presentation to a key customer. And what I do now is I'll gather people from product and product marketing and sales and maybe marketing and other places, solution, and put them into a room or a virtual room, like a Zoom environment or something, and ask them to start working on it and produce. You're kind of creating a meta universe in that content, but you're still kind of exposed to the fact that all your tools and all your content that is blended with everywhere else. If I could set up, let's say, for a product line that I'm selling, all the assets, all the tools, the right people, the collaboration, and put them into a meta universe that will enhance the productivity of what they can do in that environment by being accessible and curated, and the experience will be better. I think it's an absolute benefit. And in that, you would create the content and the library and the compartmentalization of that environment. And I think that will be in B2B. It could be in consumer only. I mean, just think about like Pokemon Go. Was a great kind of adventure to it, but if I could drop a headset when I'm playing the game, and all of a sudden it becomes that type of content that I would build into that environment and make it a killer app.
I mean, I think it's true that human beings are willing to put up with lower fidelity renderings of things if there's something that they want. Kids, used MP3s for a long time, but now we have better compression algorithms. They sound better, and people start to care a little bit more. In fact, going back to vinyl records, because they feel like that's even more faithful of a rendering. So I don't know whether that's the right analogy. I mean, I think, like, if I'm going to watch sports, I definitely don't want to watch a cartoon of it. I want to watch the actual people. And that sense of actually being there is, I think, one of the things that's going to be very important to create that immersive sense and that's going to be attractive to everyone. I mean, we haven't gotten to mainstream yet. So we have to find what it is that causes everybody to want to use it. Just like the smartphone, my story about the smartphone. I mean, I was very, very dorky for a while trying to show off my cool smartphone built on the Palm Pilot operating system, or my phone with, so like, times change, you get to a tipping point, it gets mainstream. What is that tipping point? I think part of it's going to do with the user device, and for sure part of it's going to do with the content. And I worry that you're trying to get us to say something about a particular type of content that often drives technology adoption, and we're not going to do it. We're not going to do that.
Next question.
Hi, so I'm David Shannon, and I started out in music and media production way back too long to mention. But, I really love what you guys have been talking about, just how it's all been going. One thing that I noticed that you didn't mention early on is AI, and I don't want you to mention anything about that yet. Obviously, that's going to accelerate all of this stuff. But what I really wanted to talk about was that thing that's going to drive adoption. And so I started out in music and video, and then I got into mobile messaging architecture, which I did for about 20 years. And so it's been really interesting thing, and I'm getting back into music now. And what I believe is that music, the music industry, live music, live local music in particular, in connecting with their local communities and building a network that utilizes this technology, and the same technology that Formavision is doing back there. I highly recommend that finding technologies that are enabling real life into the metaverse is going to be what really changes things. And I'm trying to do it with music. Yeah. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Pitch it to SoundCloud, man. XR SoundCloud.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think we all probably agree that to the extent that you can bring a more real experience into the metaverse, it will be better. We've seen experiments. I mean, it's not like this hasn't been going on for a long time. People have been trying to crack the code for a long time, and there have been a lot of things. And I would say XRSpace has probably done one of the best jobs of making, that sort of an avatar be attractive to people. And I think it also goes to what the other person said of it, it's music. Like, you want to be part of that content, so you're willing to degrade your experience in one way to have a great experience in this other way that the technology enables. I don't want to speak for you, but
No. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. I love the fact that you mentioned the word community. That's what we're doing here with 5G Hub, in the 5G Hub metaverse, is that we want to build a community where people not just experience once, but they come back because it's a community where they share common interests, right? And about music, again, we were just sharing in backstage, we're imagining the Taylor Swift virtual concert that it says, hey, Aaron from Seattle, come on up stage and come sing with me. How cool is that? That interaction, that sing together that only can do on the 5G network, right?
Thank you, Kurt.
And so, yeah, it's great. It's a great point.
Dean Willard with Wipro, and technology is great, but it's about use case. So Rez. Yes. Hi, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So at Karat, you've got an interesting business model around sourcing people with unique skills. Have you thought much about what your use cases are going to be in your particular business?
Actually, there is something. So just for everybody that doesn't know Karat,
you can pay me later. Buddy.
Yeah, well, I'll on that blockchain metaverse payment platform. But at Karat, what we do is we help companies that hire software engineers assist the software engineers in the process of hire. So it's live interviews that software engineers conduct on a platform. Long story short, a lot of what I hear from customers is two things. We would like to see a lot more of the underserved community make it through the process, and we know that the process is flawed with bias. There's all kinds of biases in the hiring process, tech bias, pedigree biases, other biases, and so on. So can you eliminate that bias? Part of it is by systemizing things like Karat does, right? So it's about a score, it's about a test, it's about an interview, but part of it can be by putting you into an environment where you don't feel that you're exposed to bias just because of how you looked or how you presented yourself or how you spoke or so on. I think that's a potential use case. I don't know that it's a real one. It needs to be tested and so on and managed. But yeah, we're starting to think about what is a metaverse identity can bring to the table to make the process of getting a job enjoyable, equitable, and fun. Thank you.
Hey panelists, thanks for being here today. My name's Anthiush. I'm a grad student at UW. I'm also at OneCourt. We're an innovation project partner here at the 5G Hub. My question about VR is that right now there's a huge focus on designing for sight and creating really stunning visuals and immersing visuals for VR. How important do you think it is to design for the other senses like hearing or touch to create immersive and accessible VR experiences?
Question.
I mean, I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. So we did this work with the Void, and you walk through an environment, and like I said, if there's buttons or knobs, they actually walk you up to something where that happens. If there's a flame, there's a heater. If there's a breeze, there's a wind blowing. They had one thing where you walk through spider webs, and like, you know that feeling you get? So I'm like, what the heck was that? So I took the thing off, and it was just strings hanging down from the ceiling. But what I saw was a spider web, so I believed it. And so I firmly believe that all of these other senses are important. You can fool those senses. They're not that high fidelity, so you can do things that, like there was a thing where you looked like you were dropping a whole floor, but you were on a thing that maybe moved, I don't know, 2 inches or something like that. But because you saw it, you felt like you went farther. So there are other things that you can do to fool the senses. But I do think that to get full immersion, yeah, I mean, the more the better, no question about it. And you know, we all have seen the holodeck in Star Trek where they actually interact with physical things in addition to seeing that, whatever the illusion was. We're far from doing it in that, obviously in that, you know, flexible a way, but there's things that we can do along the lines when you have a story that you're going to follow or something that's more structured, you can do it.
I think even today, there's things, and I think it helps with the sense of presence, and you know, it's hard to replicate reality, and you can actually detect it very quickly. And I think the interesting thing about some of the VR headsets these days also, so if you think about sound, is the spatial sound, where if somebody's talking over to your left, you hear them from your left. So as opposed to it just being sound coming across, you know, the room. So I feel like that's some of what is happening today. And then I think the other thing, if you in Horizon Workrooms, as an example, you can use the controller like as a whiteboard pen, and you actually feel like you're writing on the whiteboard, right? So these things all make it more real, and so I think the more we can adapt and find ways to make that happen, I think it'll give that broader sense of presence.
I mean, our smartphone does it now. Like, you know, you touch your phone and the phone has a buzzer that makes it feel like you actually clicked something. And I think haptics are super important. Great example.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
All right, before we go to the next question, just a reminder to our folks online, you can submit your questions in the chat as well, and we'll be sure to ask them here for you. All right, please.
Hi, Tim Sayre. If Google has no moat, how do Explore and Xcom create enough value to make a profit? That was the question I wrote down, and let me explain. Are you familiar with that memo that came out from Google? So my question is, if T-Mobile can provide 5G to everybody and we can all put our headsets on, and somebody can create an AI environment on a beefy laptop in an evening, doesn't that kind of kick the legs out from under the value creation for each of you? I mean, yes, if you want to be on stage with Taylor Swift, that's great, but couldn't somebody come up with a Taylor Swift lookalike and you can be up on that stage with that lookalike as well? And if the AI can do that, that represents a threat. At least I think it does. You tell me. Does that make sense?
It does. So we are in a moment in time where video and audio of us is not going to be sufficient to authenticate who we are. Yeah. And that's a much broader problem than the metaverse. I mean, the metaverse is going to be an issue of people are going to be immersed in this digitally created environment, and so who's controlling what you see and all that stuff is another piece. But in the real world too, if somebody can call up my broker and it looks like me and sounds like me and talks like me, you know, and uses the same expressions I use, and say, here, move $1 million to your account, you know, that's going to be a big deal. So I was actually in Silicon Valley on another panel having this exact discussion of we are going to need some way to authenticate ourselves, some kind of a digital identification, because you won't be able to tell. If I'm talking to you over the phone, if I'm talking to you over Zoom, you won't be able to tell. And that's true for, you know, it's not going to invent the next Taylor Swift song, probably.
Maybe.
Well, maybe, maybe not. I mean, it might. So if in that case, creatives are an even bigger problem. But I think this is a fundamental problem we're going to deal with over the next, I'd say, 5 years. Like, who are we? How do we prove that we are who we are? Is going to be a big issue. And it's not just the metaverse.
I guess
generative AI is going to do that.
My question is also, if Karat AI can charge $1 a minute, are you familiar with that?
Which one?
It's an online influencer, and she has her avatars, and they come in and they get a girlfriend for $1 a minute, right? But she's a small thing, right? If your users can get siphoned off like that should represent a threat, I would think.
Look, it's a bigger threat. I mean, it's a very broad issue.
Okay, yeah.
It's going to affect all aspects of society, that you will have digital creations, recreations of you that sound like you and have your expressions, and it's going to be hard to tell that it's not you. And people say, oh, I'm going to have a detector, but detectors are part of these systems. I mean, there's the thing that generates and the thing that tries to detect, and they fight a little digital war against each other, so it's always going to be cat and mouse. So some other thing is going to be required.
I do think it's a call to action to T-Mobile. T-Mobile needs to think about itself not just as the infrastructure that enables the 5G and that, as what else can you play in this ecosystem and architecture. And the phone and the relationship that the phone gives you with the physical world and then connects you to the virtual world and to the meta world, I think that's a place to innovate and figure out how that relationship with the person holding the phone, the identity, and other things connects you, presence and location and everything, connects the real world to the meta universe and bridges some of these and find your place in the architecture.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to add earlier, in case it was lost, that when I was speaking about community, I was really suggesting that applications that are going to drive growth and adoption are going to need to connect with local communities. And so that's what I'm trying to do with Music Scene, and to talk about what you were talking about as well, I'm actually pushing education for this type of technology, for metaverse and VR technologies, into underserved communities. Mm-hmm. So making that available, making that happen. And I think that there's a lot of things that 5G operators can do to optimize that content and develop different types of network flows that reduce the amount of bandwidth required, and AI can also help with these kinds of things as well.
Well, in the metaverse, everybody can have the best teacher, the best classroom, the best chemistry lab. They can go on field trips anywhere they want to go. I mean, these things will all happen. I think underserved communities are going to be disproportionately benefited by these technologies.
Absolutely.
I think also part of that, though, is kind of thinking of these experiences, and we have them today, though, but which is they're not always in a 3D $1,000 headset, right? They could be in 2D environments. They can be accessible through multiple devices. So really thinking about that is important as well.
Well, you do. It's been shown that people get better grades by being trained, educated in VR.
Mm-hmm. And local music from anywhere in the world. Imagine that. That's going to drive adoption.
There you go.
Hi. My question is about the impacts to our children's social skills from the metaverse. So my name is Ohad, and I'm an introvert. I've learned very hard how to present myself as an extrovert for professional life, but Aaron sees me here almost every month, and every time before I come, it's with mixed feelings that I know I'm going to come in, I'm going to need to look for somebody I know so I can start talking to them. because it's very hard for me to come and talk to somebody I don't know and start having a conversation with them. Now, I did the XRSpace demo, and I thought it was amazing how I could see a space of people, probably like-minded or partially like-minded. They had names on top, which was awesome. And they, by the way, were not in groups, okay? They were individuals, and I could come up and start talking to them.
Right.
So until that demo, in my mind, Metaverse was going to be a disaster to our children's social skills, just like COVID was. My son spent his entire senior year at home due to COVID, and it was, had an impact on everybody. But seeing that demo, it kind of opened my mind that even people like me that maybe not comfortable talking to somebody at an event like this would have that opportunity. So just your thoughts on the impact on social skills from the Metaverse.
I know for a fact there are enterprises out there use VR for HR training, for interview training, for people who's afraid of, well, from HR standpoint, is use that to how to interview people. But the other way around also, for people, there are apps, VR apps out there that, who's afraid of being interviewed, that you can get practice in VR. So those are great use cases. But as you mentioned, we also did studies, and we found there are people who, again, express themselves more freely through avatars, introverts that you mentioned, and it's a great way to, again, express yourself. And we also, if you notice, we also actually have a feature where you can enable the live cam on the mobile device. So if you feel like you want to present yourself, the real self, that's also available. So we're blending the physical and the virtual together. Depends on the type of social skills that you're used to.
Thank you.
I'm definitely from the generation where my parents thought that TV will corrupt my social skills, right? So sitting in front of TV, I think that proved to be true. But no, seriously. I think that what we think of as social skills evolves all the time. The example of COVID you brought is unique because it was an abrupt and fast and not an adoption. There is a risk with technology that gets adopted too fast or something that will create an unnatural event like COVID. But otherwise, I think, sorry, I've been shut off. Otherwise, I think our kids, they have different social skills than we did. Their kids will have, and I think it evolves with everything. So I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think with any new technology, you don't really know what there's unintended consequences, right, to certain behaviors that manifest themselves after you use it for a while, like social media, as an example. I think the interesting part about immersive worlds, and then we can expand it to things like Roblox and Minecraft, which is actually inherently social, right? Because you're in communities and you're building and you're interacting. And I think that, again, back to that sense of presence, like you behave differently because you feel a presence with other people as opposed to it being more of a broadcast mechanism where you can type something into a social media post or a comment and it's faceless, right? So I think that there's probably some nuances to the metaverse that brings more social to technology than maybe we've had for the last decade.
Thank you.
It's really a different type of social. I
Yeah.
mean, definitely, going through pandemic, with my kids, I mean, the video games, and at first as a parent, you were just, no. But they connected, and they were present with their friends,
Right.
and that was so valuable, and it got them through years.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's just a different type of social. Next question.
Hi, thank you guys so much for coming and talking about this super interesting topic. I'm Kelly, and I hang out with Ohad at events usually, so that's what I do. I've worked a bunch in this space. I worked for a while with HoloLens, and in my current role, I've created some demos using Oculus, and I'm really interested in a lot of the technologies there. And so HoloLens is AR, and then I was just talking about Oculus is VR. And another one that's really interesting to me is like Sandbox VR. I don't know if any of you guys have tried this. And so I had more of a visionary question for each of you guys, because all of you guys are working at cutting edge companies that are working on the edge of technology in this space. What is your vision around the intersection of AR and VR, and what does it look like for you? Thanks.
I'll start. With the recent talk of AI, the position that we take is that we're going to embrace it. Remember, I said Metaverse is this wonderful things that blend all these advanced technology that includes AI. And while we're working on, at least for now, the focus is on the real-time interaction experience. Think about what about the offline experience, meaning that if there isn't a real person, or when you have to sleep, then how do you continue that interaction with your friends? So AI comes in as a very big help. Think about virtual friend can be one. So this is something I can share for now. Or sales AI agent, right? Brands, enterprises can customize the way they want to engage with their customers, online or offline. What we're doing is visualizing the AI person and continue to collect data from the user's feedback and improve that engagement experience. So yeah, we would love to integrate AI into the. For sure, AI will make Metaverse that much better.
One angle that we're seeing is also on the content creation side of the house. So if you're creating 3D worlds, is it easier to produce those 3D worlds using generative AI type tools? That's another intersection point.
Yep, what they said.
Perfect. All right, next question.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your input so far. And my question is around, we've heard wonderful things about the innovation and with technology and what Metaverse is about to do. And my question is around what caution flags or maybe hurdles that you guys foresee seeing how technology had implications on both the health of business and the health of society moving forward, and how you guys plan to address that.
Let's start.
Well, if you're in, we already have a lot of misinformation. Now, just imagine you are in an immersive environment that is being controlled by who knows who, and you have these AI avatars that sound and look like you, or sound and look like somebody important that you would look up to. It's going to be a problem. We're going to have to figure out how we authenticate that things actually came from who they appeared to come from. And I think the misinformation is going to be worse in the metaverse because it's immersive and you feel it much more emotionally. You feel it, it has a much deeper impact. Like we were saying, you know who's next to you, who's talking to you. It just sticks with you. So I think this is a broader issue, as I was saying earlier, so it's not just the metaverse, but the metaverse has a potential to be an even worse space for misinformation and for getting messages that you maybe don't want to emphasize. Let's put it that way. So we're going to have to solve these problems as a society, and there's all sorts of people talking about how do you eliminate bias from things, and there's lots of focus on it. So I do believe that because we now understand it's important, that solutions that are developed for other aspects, for social media, for other areas, will be brought to bear in the metaverse too. But it's something that we, as an industry and as a society, we need to worry about.
Thank you. Looks like we have a question online. Solar.
Yes, we've got a couple. Maybe this first one from Resmond Wright could be for Rebecca or Erez to address. And the question is, what does the panel think about shopping as a use case in the metaverse? The future of shopping as we know it.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects of that. One, I think that there's definitely use cases out there, so that's the short answer. In VR, right, like going into a virtual store and seeing products and being able to select the product and feel like you're in a store, or grocery store as an example too, right? If you're doing your online shopping, now can you walk through the aisles and grocery shop instead of just pick out the products on your, on your phone? And then in AR, there's things like the Snap Mirror where you can do virtual try-ons. Amazon's doing it today, right, where you can place pieces of furniture in your space. So there's definitely really exciting use cases for commerce.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that train left the station. Shopping in a virtual environment has proven to be a mega industry and a trillion industry, and so you enhance that by being able to try something on, put it off, try it in an augmented reality, or even have like analytics around, or just data around what you bought and what it represents, maybe calorie-wise, maybe cost-wise, and so on. Just as you enhance that, it just makes it a even more compelling experience. And putting the infrastructure in there to make the payments and to all that will make it even more important.
I think one interesting new thing that may happen is this hybrid, that I buy something in the real world that also I have in the virtual with me. We were having the conversation about jewelry, whether you could get your necklace that would be both in the real world and on your avatar, and other things along those lines, that give you opportunities. And it's not like that's such a novel thing. I mean, there are things like that happening already where you bought an NFT and that got you access to certain real-world events and so forth. We did that at the Kings, and it's been done many other places. So I think that's kind of a newish thing that might get even bigger by this combination of the metaverse and the real world, and that could be a cool new opportunity.
Very cool. Another questions, Laura?
Yes, and this one's from the Metaverse. So,
wow.
Ooh, yeah. This one's from JJ, and the question is it possible to have an AI friend in the Metaverse? Oh. First of all, right?
So yes, I just was talking about, thinking about, again, we're focusing on a real person driving your avatar to interact with, but think about, there's time you have to sleep. But then, your friends from different time zones come and visit you. How do you continue that engagement and interaction? So that's where AI comes in, right? So AI friend, or even a virtual friend. We talked about being introvert. Maybe you're not as good as socializing with real person, or somehow you just don't feel right. But then you have this AI friend who understands you, and knows how you approach, knows how you talk, and that's when this AI comes in and plays a big part of that experience. So yeah, definitely it's possible.
Is the FormaVision demo over there that has the bunny? Yeah, that's a kind of interesting interaction right now, just kind of an interesting example of how AI is integrated with a 3D object, and basically it integrates ChatGPT, I think, to form the responses that the bunny actually speaks.
All right, we're all done online. Okay, we have another question in the room.
Definitely too short for this. Hi, everyone. Mona Atala here from Accenture. At Accenture, we look very broadly across lots of different industries. So my question for you on the panel is, where do we see companies monetizing, gaming aside, where do we see that most happening?
I can give one example that we already have. That was actually the temple use case that I told you about. So once we have this metaverse version of temple, the worshiping, the praying that's going on, the daily ritual that people can do even remotely. Now there's a place where if you want to light a candle and make a wish for yourself or your family, and lighting the candle, we integrate it with a payment, so that you can feel like how much you want to donate or pay for the candle that you light. And we actually integrate with the real lighting system of the temple, so that physically, the temple actually will light the candle for you. So that's already a monetization example. But the key thing is, again, coming back to what we believe is the relevant content and community. So once you have grown your community with common interests that people start sharing and interacting with each other, then the business model will come.
Thank you. Any more comments on monetization?
How did we monetize the internet?
Yeah. All right. Any other?
But I mean, everything, like so many things.
Yeah.
I think there's just going to be so many things.
Is it off?
There we go.
It was a really insightful conversation hearing from you guys. I just have a quick question. I was wondering, because in my opinion, and according to you guys, Metaverse is kind of like a more immersive community, and it's making people more immersive. But is that the development for Metaverse, is it really depending on the hardware development, or it's not?
Is it depending on the hardware to make it immersive?
Yes.
There is definitely a strong dependence on the hardware. Because if it doesn't work well, you feel sick. You have to match what your ear feels with what your eyes see, or you don't feel good. So yes, there's, to that extent, no question.
But you guys are still mentioning that we can use phones as a replacement as VR and AR, but that is not immersive enough as like a VR headset.
So
okay, I mean, look, you can see 3D things on a smartphone.
Yeah.
And it's cool, and we were doing it backstage.
Right.
But to me, like, the immersiveness is what's going to massively change the experience. This is cool, and it's clearly attractive to a lot of people. But to me, like, being in a virtual environment is, you want to be immersed.
I think it depends on the use case as well, right? I think if you're out in the world going about and you're trying to, maybe you're in a stadium trying to wayfind your way to, your favorite pizza place at the Kings game, and you're using your phone, like that might be good enough to help you wayfind your way, like using a map and an overlay to get there. Or one day when there's, augmented reality glasses that we all feel comfortable wearing around, that might just be a natural part of how we're accessing this content, right, and the experience. So I actually think there's going to be many interfaces, not just a VR headset, to access these immersive worlds, and I think you're going to have a different tolerance for the quality depending on a use case.
Yeah, the immersiveness is definitely will be generated by the device. When I was talking about using a smartphone, it's a step that we take in order to educate the market about the 3D experience, but the true immersiveness has to come from the device, VR, AR headsets. Again, I want to emphasize on 5G connection and also different use cases, right? But if you want, let me tell you a story. So at XRSpace, we started out by making VR headset. And at the time, every time when I went on the roadshow, I would do demos and people put it on and say, after they experience it, they say, nice. But the setup, the pricing, the accessibility is not there. So we broke through and onto the smartphone and tablets, right? So again, we went on the roadshow and said, hey, look, you got a smartphone, you can get into the Metaverse. And people said, nice, but do you have a VR version, right? So people are not satisfied, but the good thing is we do have experience that cross device platforms. So you can access it from smartphone, you can access it on VR headset, and no matter where you are, if you get into the space, you feel like together, right? So the VR device definitely give you a more premium immersiveness that you're looking for.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask one last question here to wrap us up for this evening. So the Metaverse is clearly a complex space and topic. What partnerships will be required, or what can this technology community and ecosystem do to come together to help accelerate the Metaverse? I'll let each of you answer that one.
So I'll start. So that's why we focusing on using the platform that we built was super easy to create and be able to customize it and for you to engage with your audience. For example, we had last year, there was one time in a span of 2 weeks, we had in Taiwan only, we had 400 schools that come in and build their own metaverses. How do we accomplish that? That's, again, we focus on UGC tools and modules that everyday user can very easily access to and build and start building their own community. So that's what we're focusing on.
Love it. Thank you, Kurt. Becca?
Yeah, I mean, it's only going to be built through the ecosystem and partnerships, large and small, Microsoft, all the way down to, you know, the tiniest, you know, woman show in startups. But there's companies that we don't even know exist and that don't exist today that are going to come up. And I think it's just really kind of the ecosystem that's going to bring this whole thing to life.
Absolutely. Paul?
I mean, look, it's going to take a community to create all the things from the deep tech that's going to make it feasible, the networking, the service providers, the application providers. I mean, it's like this is a big thing. It's big like the internet is big. And so it's going to take the same kind of work from a broad group of partners to make it come out. And by the way, not partners, competitors. And, you know, it's just this. It's going to take a lot to make it actually be great.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think, I don't know exactly what it's going to take, but hopefully we've learned from other experiences where we don't build walled gardens. The first attempt to have messaging within network really didn't open up until messaging between networks start working. So those kind of things, like don't build walled gardens around this technology. That will allow all the partners to participate and really open it up.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Wonderful. And our audience, excellent questions. Thank you, thank you. All right, and good news, we have our next session on June 13th with Taylor Swift. Just kidding. Almost as cool. We're actually going to talk about AI and ML on June 13th. So definitely go to our site. You can register there. Also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. And for those still here, please join us for some additional networking happy hour. And please check out the demos if you haven't already. So thank you again, and have a great evening.